Hi everybody, I'm Kurt Wuckert Jr. Welcome back to CoinGeek TV. We are live just as CoinGeek Zurich finishes off at the end of day one. I'm joined by Bernhard Müller from Bitcoin Association and Chanti. Perhaps another guest will be joining us shortly. And we are also joined remotely by Natalie Mason, live from Wales. Natalie, how are you?
Hey, Kurt. Really excited to be here.
So I have to ask right off the bat, what's the highlight for you? What did you enjoy most today?
So many. I mean, as Jimmy has so eloquently put it, today's focus has been on business adoption of blockchain. And my gosh, have we had so many great examples. One thing that has really stuck out to me came from Tatiana Meyer. And she mentioned how competitors need to work together to solve industry problems. Because, we all know that the solutions already exist here on BSV. And I think that's really important to kind of work through some of these misconceptions so that we can see widespread use on business adoption.
It's funny. I had a similar conversation when I was on stage with the folks on the triple entry accounting panel, Ian Grigg, Torja, and Mr. Ibanez. And exactly that. How do we hit the ground running? How do we actually make business development happen? We have a lot of really grand ideas, but I think they gave some really interesting insights there too as to how they're going to go out there, start to sell their solutions to the world, and gave me quite a bit of hope. And of course,
absolutely,
yeah, absolutely. And so, any other highlights from you, Natalie?
Gosh, well, I mean, of course, BitBoss, that's huge for everyone to see a stable coin that's on Bitcoin SV that's actually happening now. I mean, that's a huge announcement that's happened today for anyone who missed that. Definitely worth hearing that in detail as well.
Absolutely. No, I'm excited to learn more. It'd be good to get one of the BitBoss people if they're floating around here also.
Yeah.
But until then, we have Mr. Bernhard Müller.
Hi, Kurt. Pleased to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Chanti had some interesting stuff to share on stage. Maybe you can give us a little rundown for the audience as to what you covered.
Yes, sure. So we're actually a payments company focused on events, on media payments, as well as point of sales integration and e-commerce. But today we showcased our new Chanti wallet, which is featuring STAS tokens. These are tokens which are built in native Bitcoin scripting language, which is very exciting to us and brings many advantages. And with that, we want to, build loyalty programs, vouchers, tickets, all sort of things for our partners in the event industry. And yes, and then also we showcased our media product and had a little tech demo, which gladly I was able to save in the end.
Yeah, you had a little bit of load reload up there, but you handled it quite well under pressure.
Was just for the tension.
You know what? That's good. You did a good job with it. I have to ask, what's it like? What is the nature of things on the ground here in Switzerland, and what's your role in being that representative?
Yeah, that's interesting. So Switzerland is very, very Bitcoin core focused, actually, from like the sort of developer community and the let's say core Bitcoin meetup. But I guess that's similar around the world. And for a long time, I was potentially the only sort of publicly outspoken big blocker who said, hey, we got to scale that thing. We got to actually build utility and use it, and the whole hodl meme and everything. That won't really work a long time. And now I'm really pleased. First of all, CoinGeek is here, but we're also having companies coming here, including Tal and Enchain and the Bitcoin Association as an association. But I'm also seeing other Swiss people getting involved, getting interested. Even so-called non-coiner friends of mine are saying, oh, and in light of all the carbon emissions and everything, oh, that's really efficient. Wow. And you actually throughput works. And that's actually quite amazing.
Absolutely. Mr. Urs Birchler, thank you for joining us, first of all.
Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of the history of money, so it was a really great presentation. It was a pleasure to listen to you speak. Natalie, can I pass to you for a question or two to Mr. Birchler, or would you like me to cover some of the island of Yap Rye Stones currency we learned some interesting information on this afternoon?
Well, I mean, gosh, as a Bitcoin historian for CoinGeek, Kirk, I mean, I know I've got to let you take this one and you've got loads of great things. But I mean, one thing that I did want to ask actually to both gentlemen that are sitting there. Of course, the world looks to Switzerland as world renowned for financial regulation. And of course, Bitcoin SV is actually very compliant, but this is lesser known. What are your thoughts on that and getting that message out?
Well, I'm not sure I'm a specialist on that very question. I did banking regulation, at least from a theory point of view and some also from a practical point of view for most of my life. But I have not worked on Bitcoin or Bitcoin SV regulation in any meaningful sense. I'm sorry to say so.
Well, maybe to make it better, actually, then, as someone who understands the history and the background, what do you think then? It takes a very long time for things to change with institutions like this, as you mentioned on the panel. So how do you see this change happening going forward for any blockchain adoption?
Well, I think for an economist, the starting point would be what I call the Brunermeier trilemma. It's named after the famous German economist Markus Brunermeier. And the trilemma is between decentralization, efficiency, and safety. Let's say central bank money is very centralized, so you lose on decentralization, but it's quite safe against forgery on the other hand, and it's relatively efficient. Bitcoin is very decentralized. Bitcoin in the sense of BTC. It's very decentralized, it's very safe if I look at the blockchain, but it's highly inefficient regarding electricity consumption. Now, I see that the inventors of variations of Bitcoin or of other coins try to optimize or to within this Brunermeier triangle, or maybe even to narrow it a little bit to make the conflicts a little bit less severe. And I take it that with bigger blocks, you can, of course, reduce the electricity waste. What you lose in sense of decentralization or of safety, that is another issue, and I'm not a specialist to assess that.
I would like to ask something about this trilemma, because I'm hearing that a lot, and I do get this triangle, but I think the triangle, or let's say if we had to norm it, the amount of whatever, security, decentralization, can also be bigger and smaller. And our argument is clearly, if we have 10,000 nodes running in big banks and they process blocks, as we've seen on the Terra node this morning, actually presented by Steve Shatters, we're winning on the security and we have even more decentralization than you have today. So I think the total scale, or the total, you could say, weight, or amount of transactions, velocity, I am not a monetary scientist, matters as well. So do you have a small triangle and you're trying to triangulate small values, or do you have a big triangle with big values?
Well, the size of the triangle illustrates the severity of conflicts. So technical progress would be to narrow the triangle down. To what degree that is possible is a difficult question, because we cannot anticipate technical development. But it's already a big progress if we can optimize within the triangle. So probably the BTC solution was really kind of a corner solution, the most expensive way to operate the digital currency. So if you can get away from that, that may already be a progress. Okay, but it's not. We should not expect the triangle to narrow down to one single point.
Okay, what do you call narrow? Just to repeat, so I understand. So you do acknowledge that the triangle can be bigger or smaller, or the amounts of decentralization, security, and so on can differ, and then we still have to find, of course, the optimum within whatever is given.
Yes, and you do that in competition to other currencies, including cash, including central bank money, and including central bank digital currency, if one central bank starts to issue it.
With a little bit of background in cybersecurity, I'd like to point out that the trilemma has always bothered me a little bit, especially in Bitcoin, because I see decentralization as a subset of security. And so I always feel like it really is a two-part dilemma. You have scalability versus security, and decentralization is an aspect of that security. But we don't need to get into the weeds anymore on
we'll
it.
get quite far into the weeds with that.
Maybe the triangle has more than 3 corners. Or
Let's come up with a new one. We can name it after you, Mr. Birchler.
Hopefully not.
So, Natalie, I would like to pass to you, and maybe you can ask the gentleman here. What are we most excited about tomorrow for what's going on at CoinGeek Zurich on day 2?
Well, I mean, I personally am most excited to hear what's happening first thing in the morning. Tuvalu. There's actually a country that will have BSV as the national digital ledger. I think this will be one of the huge pioneering use cases of Bitcoin SV. That's got to be it for me. How about for you?
Oh man. I think there's probably too many things, frankly. I'm excited for, I'm a fanboy when it really comes down to it. So actually, maybe we can pass to Mr. Müller or Birchler for tomorrow. Will you be around?
Well, what I would love to learn, I'm not sure if you're going to touch upon that tomorrow, is the most recently published plans of El Salvador to introduce Bitcoin as a legal currency. Because already legal currency is a relatively tricky notion. It has several facets, and the country introducing a currency without its reach, without its influence, that would be quite a step. And I would hope that some of your speakers would enlighten us a little bit on that.
Sounds like something that would be good for a long-form podcast, in my opinion. But if we want to throw in something instantly, I'd be happy to hop on a panel and discuss, frankly.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how they're going to handle the fees, or if they're going to, what sort of technology they try to actually make it work for their everyday people in El Salvador.
Yeah, seven transactions per second. I don't know is going to be ideal. What do you think, Natalie?
I mean, I think this is one of the things actually has also stuck out today. There are so many misconceptions that people have, even on what Bitcoin is. We, of course, refer to Bitcoin SV as Bitcoin big blockers here. So I think this is also a really big thing, maybe that we should discuss. There's so much confusion. And I think one of the positives to come from today is that Bitcoin SV, as we know, it's proven low transaction fees, which makes it scalable. And this allows for business adoption. So maybe actually I'd like to throw a question to Bernhard and, of course, congratulate you on Chanti's latest service and this widget to go through pay-as-you-go services. How is something like that going to be using Bitcoin SV blockchain?
Well, thanks, Natalie, for the question. Actually, this very application you saw there, even though I get quite some responses of impressed people, that's sort of back to where we were with Bitcoin 2013. We just had to sort of unblock it now to get those applications back, to get the application back, to pay 50 cents to read a news article or $1. And that was what you saw was a live Bitcoin transaction on the BSV network. And our backend, receiving that transaction and saying, well, that's valid cash. I'm going to, drop the paywall and you can read the article.
And why does something like this, for people who don't understand blockchain technology, why does something like this work on blockchain as opposed to just creating a service that has nothing to do with blockchain whatsoever?
Yeah, the reason is, we could launch this service just using a database or using something else. But what we want to create is not this sort of monolithic environment. We want to create, an environment for productivity and innovation. And maybe, tomorrow, let's say, in the future, and we can't announce that yet, but we've heard about, stable coins just on a panel. So just imagine you had a good stable coin which actually works legally and technically for payments. Suddenly you open this up and somebody can come along and say, hey, here's my electric bike rental stand, and you pay the deposit and everything's fully automated. And these are sort of the prospects we see. And I think people are going to come up with much better ideas than just a simple paywall payment, which is very practical, and we think there is a lot of value for the industry. But the creativity is really the only border here of what you can do, and that's so great about scalable blockchain.
Well, and I think it's important to keep money public as well. If money is public, then it can be trusted, it can be audited, and then we get to trust it as money without having to trust whatever special purpose money we're talking about. And then, of course, that enables people to build Chuck E. Cheese tokens, for lack of a better term, and in a way that's trusted because they're also secured there. But they can make their own rules because it's not like Chuck E. Cheese tokens need, that intense security model. Would you agree?
Well, I would distinguish stable coins and the true cryptocurrencies. Stable coins are just derivatives of something like central bank money, while the true cryptocurrencies are actually accounting units for non-existing assets, as one critical person has remarked. Now, this means that on the one hand, you have a fascinating idea of currency resting on a blockchain, and at the same time, there is technical and institutional progress going on in the sense that today's cryptocurrency you're holding will not be the cryptocurrency in which most people will believe in the near or far future. So you are in this conflict. Should I buy BTC because it's the classical one, or should I anticipate that given technical progress, BTC will not be the cryptocurrency of the future?
I mean, that may be the real dilemma, frankly.
Yeah.
How does someone who doesn't understand the nature of the protocols and what Bitcoin is supposed to be versus how it's been implemented, or general, the zeitgeist of what people understand it to be, how can we go about having those conversations in a way that's valuable? Because, frankly, I think we lose people in about 45 seconds if we go into, the protocol.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why it's so important that we just show the applications, that we show what can be built. Because if you, give your mom a hand cash wallet or another really functional, highly functional Bitcoin wallet into their hands, and they can just try it and they can send it around, and then they maybe remove a paywall or do something, that's where you understand, and of course, I think focusing more on what we have to offer rather than what maybe others not offer could be a very good good approach long term.
So you think product development leading to business development, and then but again, who has the incentive to go out there and teach people these things? I mean, we see certain people go out and say, hey, you should be accepting Bitcoin at the grocery store, but what's the incentive for the person, the salesman, however, to do such a thing?
Well, in our case, it's simple. You can earn a reward and you can earn revenue participation, and I think that's quite an incentive, actually.
Absolutely. I think that's wise in your business model, Bernhard. Natalie, I'm pretty excited personally. I'd like to move over to NFTs, tokens generally, but we have an NFT panel coming up tomorrow. I'm quite curious to hear your thoughts about the NFT panel and anything else you're excited about tomorrow.
Well, actually, that really ties into today as well, because there was some really interesting stuff already that's come up to do with NFTs. There was a guy, I can't really remember his name, I believe it's Matt from, I don't know if you can help me with this, but he's got a program like 6Connects, the wonderful technology that we're using to bring this live now. But he mentioned some great points on NFTs as well, on how they're trying to use those, and looking at NFTs in art as well.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, if I could know everybody, I would, but I don't know which Matt, so I apologize. I think it's interesting. Something worth pointing out is that the NFT idea is actually a little bit convoluted. I don't know if people understand what NFTs are, or there's been a big discussion of who made the first NFT, and I think it may have actually been Unisat on BSV with their tokenized fish, unless anybody has a different recollection.
Could well be. I mean, an NFT should really sort of be able to have a unique history, which these digital twins of the fish could definitely have. A lot of people call things NFT these days, which are actually perfectly fungible, and there may be small print runs of something fungible. But if sort of a token can really have its own history, if you're thinking of crypto fights and you have an avatar and he's got a black eye from a last fight and it sort of carries on, that's an NFT, I guess.
No, absolutely. I think it's a delightful definition, frankly. On Twitch, they just simply call them items. I think our lingo needs to change a little bit, given that we're not all computer scientists and all nerds here. We need to start attracting an increasing amount of people that just want to live their lives, play games, do business.
Yeah. But I think that ties totally into what you said just before. The lingo and how do we get explain BSV and all this. I don't think we have to if we can actually show utility, and I don't think it matters for the person, for example, one day that's going to use Chanti, what's the underlying technology. You don't know how the injector maybe works in your car. I don't personally know how TCP/IP works. I'm using every day. And I don't think people need to fully understand. What's important, what you said about transparency, they need to be able to comprehend if they want to, which is a completely different story than everybody needs to do everything or everybody needs to know everything.
Yeah, so we can create value anyways.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't stifle the value creation or the innovation because you want everyone to get along and have the same understanding. We'd never fly to the moon if every human that watches it on TV needs to, be Werner von Braun.
Yeah, we don't need every person on Earth to validate that each of the parts operate on the rocket. We need to specialize.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, welcome to Big Block Bitcoin, ladies and gentlemen. Natalie, anything else to add about tomorrow's panel?
Yes, actually. Well, I'm so stuck on today, Kurt. I've got to say, because I've been watching it all. I've got to say, because I've been watching it all, I've actually got a couple of questions for all three of you, in fact.
Let's do it.
This one's a tongue twister as well, I tell you. Dr. Holger Vogel, amazing speaker. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. And one of the things that he said was that he believes that Bitcoin SV is the most compliant blockchain. And I just thought this was a really important point for us to pick up on because, and especially that we're in Switzerland, which people look to for compliance. And how do we, again, get a message like that out there?
Well, that's a fantastic question. Bernhard?
Sure. Well, I wouldn't, maybe being a nitpicker here, but I wouldn't say Bitcoin SV is compliant per se. What's important is it is fully compliant compatible. So you don't obfuscate records. You can adhere to privacy compliance. It isn't only financial compliance, it's also privacy compliance. So you can operate a fully compliant business basically on top of it, and that's what's ultimately important. It doesn't mean every single transaction is necessarily compliant in that sense.
Sure, so you're still capable of doing something illegal on chain. It's just going to be on chain and therefore in the privy of the police.
Public space.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably not the smartest thing to do, but if it's something small, nobody will care. If it's something big, they will care and they will find you.
Sure.
Well, Bernhard, I mean, you've just gone through this process yourself with Chanti. So do you have any advice for business developers out there who are maybe thinking of trying to put their business on blockchain and things that have just come up for you?
Well, the advice is really to not think you're held back by the technology. The advice is to get creative and then also to think, where is a good niche and can I place a product there and does it really add value? And of course, as a startup, that's always going to be a risk. You're never going to be certain. But I just had a discussion out in the hall here before about just that. Somebody had some technical questions and basically they're now all out of the way, and he realized, okay, it's only my imagination which holds me back now. And of course, you need a business plan. You should, have the plan of essentially running a business, and otherwise you can run a charity or something.
No, absolutely. And that begs a question. This came up on the panel that I was hosting earlier, too, is the tax compliance around micropayments. I mean, what are the tax implications of sending 1/1000th of a penny? And how can we possibly, how can we start to manage that? Because I mean, we're
Great
playing
question.
games where I'm spending sometimes hundreds of sub-cent transactions a day, and I suppose there is tax implications, but perhaps not tools to rectify them.
I think it's more difficult in the United States because what I hear, basically every time you switch from Bitcoin to either another currency or product, let's say you buy a coffee, that's a taxable event, so you need to know, when did I buy these Bitcoins, how much did I make on that. I guess nobody's going to go after you for a coffee. In Switzerland, that's fortunately not a problem. There is no value gain tax, so it makes it rather easy, and the Swiss Federal Council has already in 2013 stated that for him, Bitcoin is basically like a foreign currency, so like the euro or something. Of course, you still need to pay VAT on purchases, that's clear, but you're not going to be taxed twice. I give you an example. If I were to pay you in silver and you mow my lawn, we have to pay VAT twice because we're basically making two trades, you mow my lawn and that's VAT taxable and the silver. But if you use bullion gold or a currency like euros or Swiss francs, there is no tax on the currency side, only on the product or service side.
Fascinating. Lessons to learn for anybody looking to do business in, frankly, any currency in Switzerland, I suppose. Natalie, anything else to add?
Yeah. Well, you know what, actually, I wouldn't mind, if you don't mind, while I've got
Please.
you guys, it's so exciting, just both of your amazing brains. I've got a couple of questions I'd love to ask. One actually, this is something that came up, a friend of mine was watching along with me today. For people who have no idea about Bitcoin SV, most people are looking at cryptocurrencies in terms of trading and investment, that they can trade and hold and the rest of it. So how do you guys see this idea changing, and does it matter?
I'm going to take this one. We only have a couple of minutes left here, but I think people, when they get past the investment aspect of Bitcoin, because of its scarcity and some of its other properties, you really look at the opportunity in business. And if you look at the opportunity in business, and Bitcoin can solve a payments friction problem or a data integrity problem for that company, and then repurpose that into profit, then all of a sudden we're having a conversation that isn't about, is this a commodity? Is this property? Is this all these things? How should this be taxed? It becomes a business tool. And when it's a business tool, then it can start to be treated differently by regulators. But I think it needs to start with the people that are in the real economy that are doing absolutely that. We need to take these sort of gray areas and we need to make them crystal clear in business. And this is really how most things change globally. It's up to us to change. The government's not just going to proactively change the nature of Bitcoin on us. Do you have a 30-second response, Mr. Müller?
Yeah, you know, as a startup or as an entrepreneur in that space, you're never going to have the 100% certainty. That's very unfortunate, even if you'd like to have it, because regulation, you know, if you think of internet regulation, you know, in the beginning there wasn't. Today's GDPR rules, for example, how, you know, that collecting an email address is, you know, personal identifiable data, that didn't even exist back then. So you'll always, as someone that's spearheading the innovation, you always kind of, of course you want to operate fully compliant, but you have to live with certain uncertainties. You can't run the business otherwise. That's the inconvenient truth.
Sounds like no pain, no gain. So
well, hopefully no pain, but what's really important, especially in Switzerland, is your due diligence and your sort of good conscience of checked. That counts a lot, whether you actually care or whether you don't care.
Absolutely. Well, real entrepreneurs, please join us. And I want to thank everybody today for joining us here at CoinGeek TV. Mr. Urs Birchler needed to leave a little early to catch a train. Bernhard Müller, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Kurt. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Natalie Mason, I'm delighted to see you on film. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Reimagine the world's financial system. One built on being simple and fair, not one that's overcomplicated, outdated, and broken, and keeps a quarter of the world's population from accessing it. Reimagine your own finances. Do you have full visibility and control of your assets and investments? We believe there's a better way, a new future for financial services. One built on equal opportunity, where possibilities are limitless, not limited, and everyone can live the life to which they aspire. At Fabric, we're weaving a better future of finance for the billions locked out and the billions locked in. A safe, open, and fully transparent financial ecosystem built on innovative technology, where anyone can transform, hold, trade, and grow their assets, all in one accessible place. But this journey isn't ours to take alone. Are you ready to join in? To reimagine a better future with us? Where everything is digital and anything is possible. Fabric. Reimagine prosperity.
Data is double-edged. Wield it well and build your place in tomorrow. But trust it blindly and risk watching your progress crumble. Because much of the data we rely upon isn't reliable at all. At nChain, we believe in data, but we put no faith in it. Instead, we build tools that enable enterprises to trust the data upon which they rely. nChain, data without question.
Is greatness really just for a chosen few? For prodigies? For superstars? It's not planned. It's experienced by those with great support and some resilience. For those that strive to go to the edge once more, pushed and guided with excellent support. Support that provides groundbreaking technology by and for those that know it's all about velocity.
Imagine in 1997 paying for something with your watch. Remember the last time you used cash? The world has been digitized. Almost.
Cash was once seen as the last bastion for reform, but now is on the decline. Digital transactions have outcompeted hard currency since 2017 in the UK, but breakthrough bold technologies like blockchain have revolutionised more than just money.
Disruptive technologies call for disruptive lawyers, ones that don't just accept the current, but find new ways of interpreting the law. We are currently the only global law firm with a real track record in the area of Bitcoin and blockchain. We are results driven and care only about securing the best possible result for our clients.
We trace the supposedly untraceable. We pioneer the future of law. We deliver new solutions. We are law changers.
The biggest sickness in healthcare isn't a disease. It's not a bacteria or a virus. It's the silence. See, the data we need to combat diseases, to stop suffering, it's not waiting to be uncovered. It's stuck behind closed doors in stubborn silos. The healthcare industry has the data to improve our lives in untold ways, but no one communicates. And in that silence, countless lives are lost. That's why at EHR Data, we're building the largest ever shared data set of human health. And it won't belong to a hospital, government, a corporation. It will belong to the rightful owner of your healthcare data, you. We're merging healthcare records with blockchain to finally put you in control. Because your data doesn't belong on private servers. It should be in your hands in service to your health. The greatest sickness may be silence, but the silence stops when you have a voice. EHR Data. Own your health.
Different backgrounds, diverse geographies, and disparate experiences can all inspire ideas that lead to breakthroughs. And with blockchain, we've barely scratched the surface on its potential. So what's next for this breakthrough technology, and where can it take us? That's where you come in. Learn to leverage your creativity and harness the power of blockchain technology to tackle the biggest challenges of today and opportunities of tomorrow. Discover how you can make your ideas a reality with BSV, the only blockchain that scales unbounded, offers a stable platform with world-class security, and the support of a global community of experienced, knowledgeable developers. Join the 4th BSV Virtual Hackathon, and let's build the future on the blockchain.